Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and explore a deeply disruptive philosophy that really challenges decades of established surf school culture. If you've been around the surfing instruction world for a while, you know the standard playbook inside and out. But today, we're unpacking a comprehensive framework called Surfe Natural, developed by Bruno F.A. Castella da Costa. It is an entirely different starting point for how we introduce humans to the ocean. So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt the conflict between respecting real learning time and, well, meeting market demands? This is a crucial question, and it highlights a genuinely painful reality for exhausted surf instructors everywhere. There's just this relentless demand for rapid, visible results, namely getting a student standing up on a board within an hour. But as the source material argues, this rush often creates people with boards rather than true ocean-adapted surfers. Section 1. The Surf School Dilemma. To really understand why well-intentioned surf schools are trapped in this mechanical push surfing model, we first need to look at the business logic sustaining them. It's not actually about anyone doing something wrong. It's about resource dependency. This quote from Harvard's Clayton Christensen completely removes the guilt from instructors by showing how market pressure literally forces them into practices they wouldn't freely choose themselves. The resources, parents paying for lessons, students desperate for a quick social media photo, those are the things dictating the pedagogical approach. And because of this intense pressure, market demands force an artificial acceleration of visible results. When parents and students show up expecting to stand up on day one, the learning process is reduced to what the author calls immiscible pills of instruction. Basically, isolated, unmixable chunks of information. Instructors end up trying to stitch together isolated movements like paddling, popping up, and balancing, all on dry land. This creates a really stilted, mechanical initiation that completely stifles true organic progression and honestly leaves lasting pedagogical scars. The student becomes entirely locked onto the concept of balance, completely neglecting the true essence of surfing, which is the wave itself. Section 2. Enter Surfe Natural. So, what's the alternative here? Well, what's really interesting about this concept is that Surfe Natural is not actually an attack on the current model, but rather a parallel, disruptive evolution. It's a completely different pathway. Traditional instruction isolates the learner's attention entirely on not falling. Think about a beginner's face out there, tense, looking down, utterly consumed by the act of balancing, right? Surfe Natural totally flips this. By taking away that immediate overwhelming pressure of standing up, natural initiation opens the learner's attention to the surrounding ecosystem, the movement of other surfers, and the actual dynamics of the wave. Furthermore, instead of handing the student a preconceived, highly mechanized sequence of movements on the sand, the organic approach encourages discovering the sport through direct imitation of reality. The learner doesn't start from a fragmented intellectual explanation. Instead, they start by simply observing the tribe in its natural habitat and imitating what they see. True interpretation is born out of direct, unmediated contact with the ocean. We also completely flip the script on the instructor's role here. In the traditional model, the instructor is essentially a protector and a propeller. They literally stop their own surfing to physically push the student into a wave. Surfe Natural shifts this to the concept of a role model surfer. The surfer teaches simply by surfing. They stay true to their nature, and the learner uses them as a sort of anchor point to understand the ocean's rhythm, stripping away all that artificial pressure of being explicitly coached. Section 3. Mechanical versus organic learning. Let's move to the actual methodology. How does a student actually learn if we aren't giving them step-by-step mechanical instructions? Well, it all comes down to indirect training. If you've ever seen The Karate Kid, think of Mr. Miyagi having Daniel San paint the fence or sand the floor. Daniel thought he was just doing chores, but he was actually building deep muscle memory. Surfing Natural uses this exact same principle, teaching without announcing and learning without noticing. The body learns fluid, autographic movement best in the silence of the mind, long before our conscious, anxious thoughts can jump in and interfere. The source material refers to this beautifully as the pedagogy of lions. Think about it. A mother lion doesn't slow down the jungle to carefully explain hunting to her cubs. She just leads by example. The cubs learn through environmental and emotional exposure with almost zero physical intervention. Rather than trying to artificially slow down the ocean to accommodate a student, the learner is naturally pulled right into the rhythm of the environment. So the crucial point is how we actually apply this out in the water. It all starts with shadowing. To do this effectively, the learner actually doesn't use a stand-up board at all. They start with a bodyboard and fins. Why?
because it immediately breaks that toxic focus on balance we talked about, allowing for incredibly comfortable observation. And here is the real kicker. They ditch the leash entirely. We'll talk about why in just a second. But from there, their only job is to shadow the role model surfer, dynamically adjusting their distance, almost like a sports photographer, keeping their subject in frame. They literally learn to see before they even attempt to execute a maneuver. Section 4. Redefining safety and vulnerability.
Now I know exactly what you're thinking. Sending a beginner out without a leash? That sounds absolutely crazy. But safety in this framework isn't just about spotting rip currents and knowing CPR. It fundamentally relies on absolute vulnerability. This means that true safety actually stems from humility. It's the ability to consciously view the environment through the eyes of someone who truly lacks the skills to protect themselves. You aren't taking safety for granted anymore. Every breath, every single movement becomes calculated. While traditional instruction relies heavily on reactive safety, meaning we only really worry about safety when things go wrong or when a student wipes out, Surfe Natural builds safety into the very fabric of the lesson from minute one. By removing the leash, you instantly force a state of absolute vulnerability. Suddenly, even small waves demand respect. It organically constructs a profound sense of responsible freedom, simply because the learner realizes they can't just casually discard their board. They have to actually read the ocean. This leads us directly to the 3 layers of surfing. Layer 1 is that superficial focus we mentioned, simply standing up. By temporarily abandoning this goal entirely, we reveal the hidden, far more important layers beneath it. For instance, Layer 2 is the deep awareness of surfer behavior, learning to actually read waves and position yourself correctly. And Layer 3 is true autonomy, facing the raw consequences of your decisions without a leash to save you. These deeper layers are where true instinct and unassisted ocean literacy actually live. Organic stimulation speaks directly to the learner's heart and emotions. Unlike direct, purely intellectual learning, which tends to fragment knowledge into disconnected robotic steps, organic exposure stabilizes the learner psychologically. It shapes their behavior from the inside out. When safety and ocean awareness are felt emotionally on a visceral level, they are simply never forgotten. Section 5. The Natural Surfing Hub. Now, at this point, if you happen to be a surf school owner, you might be wondering how a business survives this kind of disruption when paying customers want to stand up today. You have bills to pay, right? The author understands this innovator's dilemma perfectly. You obviously can't just replace your profitable traditional surf school overnight without risking the whole operation. Instead, you create what's called a natural surfing hub. This operates as a discrete, temporary space that runs completely parallel to the main school. It borrows the school's territorial jurisdiction, sure, but there are absolutely no shared uniforms or shared students. This brilliant setup protects the school's core revenue while safely incubating a highly disruptive, organic learning ecosystem. It doesn't threaten established instructor authority at all. And over time, as the method matures and proves its worth, it seamlessly graduates into a fully independent entity. I'm going to leave you with this one provocative thought. If you are an instructor, a coach, or even just a surfer who deeply cares about the culture of the ocean, how could incubating a discrete, parallel space for organic learning fundamentally transform your own approach? It's a real challenge to look past the mechanical push surfing routine and seriously consider how embracing this paradigm shift could entirely redefine the true nature and the ultimate safety of the next generation of surfers at your local break. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep observing and keep learning.